Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to the Ask Me Anything. My name is Vanessa. I am from Spring. Very excited for tonight's conversation. We'll be chatting with two wonderful influencers and ventures and ecosystem players in the Atlantic region today. Before we do, I'm going to take you through a little bit about Spring and what we do here. Welcome today to our Ask Me Anything, ready to invest in Atlantic Canada. We run at Spring Ask Me Anythings quite regularly, and today we're really honored to share this space and really focus it on an upcoming project we have in the Atlantic region starting in January. And today we're chatting with two wonderful people who are very active in the region. We got Dan Brake, the Chief Technology Officer at Polyunity, based in Newfoundland, and the Growth Funding and Investment Strategy Manager at Volta, Dan Oshedin. So we'll hear from them in a few minutes. Real quick, before we get started, I would really like to just take us through a very quick land acknowledgement. I acknowledge that I live and work and play on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Anishinabeg, which is specifically the Garden River and Batchewana First Nations. I invite everyone else to engage in your own land acknowledgement and to please engage in your communities as well to make this a more truthful land acknowledgement. First up, our impact at Spring. What are impact investment challenges? Really, it's a way for us to engage in the ecosystems, engage in the innovation ecosystems that we work with and work within. What we do is we create a space, we bring impact investors who have capital, and then impact ventures who have a solution, and we bring them all together into this impact investment challenge to maximize impact together. It's really what we're all about. At Spring, we always take a community approach in everything that we do. So far through our challenges, we've trained 255 investors, 199 companies or ventures have been featured. We've made $1.8 million indirect impact investments have been made into these ventures that we featured. And we've been able to catalyze $47 million of impact investments. And so what that means is that as we go through our challenges, there's usually a winning venture at the end. And so that would be our direct impact investments. But those that we've catalyzed are through the other ventures that have also participated in the program. They run through the program with our investors as well. And so they've also been able to benefit from investment and other opportunities and connections that have been made through the challenge. Really exciting what we have coming up in January. We have our Atlantic Canada Impact Investment Challenge. We have two streams, which is very exciting. First stream is the Clean Tech stream, supported by Imaginal Ventures, Foresight Canada, the NRC IRAP, and the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. And then the second stream is our Health Innovation stream, also supported in partnership with Imaginal Ventures, Halo Health, and the Nova Scotia Health Innovation Hub. What does this look like to you if you're interested? Bear with me on this crazy busy slide. Really what we're trying to tell you here is that October, November, December is really all about us engaging with you as investors, giving you the opportunity to learn about these programs, hear from people in the ecosystem. And if you're interested, you reach out to us and we bring everybody together for the January kickoff. You'll meet your ventures, meet the other investors, and then we'll go through the entire program. It is about 2 hours a week for 10 weeks from January to March 2024. You can expect to dedicate about 2 to 3 hours a week on this, working with other investors, with the ventures, and also with some of our legal partners as well, who will be there to help you out with some of the paperwork and really walking us through due diligence, which would be including valuations, negotiations, investment memos. We'll talk a lot and really be very supportive with you during the special purpose vehicle session, making sure all the paperwork is filled out. And then finally, at the end, we all come together in person. We have a nice live pitch, a nice live event. And at the end, everybody here will vote on a winning venture, and that's when your investment will be made. And the wonderful thing about our program is that all investors are welcome. We are open for accredited investors and non-accredited, in other words, aspiring investors, which is a very unique opportunity. You will not find other programs or challenges like this across Canada. And what that means, we'll send this off to you later and we'll provide some more information if you're unsure which category you fit in. But if you are an accredited investor, we are hoping for a minimum of $10,000 in terms of a minimum investment, plus your $1,200 program fees, which comes out to just over $11,000 in terms of your commitment. And then for our aspiring or non-accredited investors, our minimum investment is as low as $2,500 plus that $1,200 program fee, which ends up becoming $3,700. But because you're all here today and joining us in this wonderful conversation, we're really happy to offer you this discount code. The AMA 2023 will, if you use that code after applying, you will get a $500 discount on those program fees. So please be invited to take advantage of that. The application process is super simple. Once again, we'll send this out to you later. You can actually just press this little button right here. This is submit application form. You can click it. It'll open up for you. You can fill it in. You'll find a spot there where you'll put the discount code in. You'll get an email from us to schedule a call with me. And then we will, after talking through, your intentions, what interests you about impact investment, maybe you'll have some questions about, your categorization and the minimum investments fee. Once all that's confirmed, we're happy to accept you into the Atlantic Canada Impact Investment Challenge. We'll send you a program commitment letter and then just some invoices for those program fees. And we will be ready to go for January. So please, if you have any questions, you can contact me, Vanessa at spring.is. And again, be welcome to apply for the program. We'll get in touch. And please be mindful of using this AMA 2023 discount code for that $500 discount. And so with that, a wonderful thank you to all of our partners here, including Imaginal Foresight and our NRC IRAP Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, Halo Health, and the Nova Scotia Health Innovation Hub. I told you we are very true to working with community. I'm going to stop this here. I'm going to come back and I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful speakers that we have joining us today. First up, as I mentioned, Dan Brake from the CTO of PolyUnity. Please come on down whenever you're ready, whenever you want. And I'm also here to welcome Dan Oshadin from Volta. Here we go. We got one. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And we got other. Hello, hello. We have Dan, and then I'm Van, but I would actually rather be a cool little SUV or something, like those new electric Mustangs. I saw a commercial for that the other day, and those look pretty nice. But welcome. We'll talk about that stuff later. Thank you for joining us. Very excited to have you both here. I know you're both very involved in the ecosystem. I think maybe just to get us started, maybe Dan Brake, I'll start with you. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do at PolyUnity and about the organization in general. I follow you and Jacqueline, your CEO, on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty sure for the last few weeks, I'm pretty sure almost every other day I've seen some new award that we won or government funding offered. So I really would like to make sure that there's some space here for you to brag over all the wonderful things you guys are doing.
Yeah, we've had a great fall. So yeah, Dan Brake, CTO with PolyUnity, and we help digitize healthcare supply chain. We do that by helping our healthcare partners reap the benefits of additive manufacturing, so 3D printing, from which you can do all sorts of things. So 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't know a whole lot about additive manufacturing and 3D printing. I've now come to realize and learn that it's you can make kind of final use products using additive manufacturing. The material types and the type has just exploded. There's new material types coming out all the time. There's new machines coming out all the time. It's getting faster, more efficient, and it will repatriate a lot of manufacturing into North America, which has a lot of benefits. First of all, it brings jobs, homes, and things like that. But the other big thing is just impact on the environment with supply chain. Also, with additive manufacturing, you're not stripping product away; you're adding product. So there's a massive reduction in waste. I'm a bit of a tree hugger, so I like anything to do with the environment is obviously fantastic. And the other amazing thing is for healthcare, our healthcare partners, lots of times they're doing things from a day-to-day basis. They don't really have a great way to say, oh, I need to innovate something, or I want to change my process, or if I had something that did this, I could, things would be better. and we can literally go from that problem statement and help them develop a product. So we do everything right from design. We have a massive digital warehouse that's grown to over 500 products in the last 12 months. Um, or sorry, by over 500 products in the last 12 months. There's more than that in the inventory. And we also handle all the manufacturing. So healthcare, from a healthcare client perspective, they have to do very little apart from sign up, and we help them through everything else, including making use of machines. They may have already made some capex to acquire machines themselves, and we help them reap the benefits of having that equipment on site too. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Awesome. No, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. I myself have come from medtech. I've been in medtech for about 10 years. And so I remember when I was introduced to you and I was looking through like all the materials and the pitch deck, and I was like, wow, it's truly is very unique what you're doing in the space, and the additive manufacturing piece and being able to go like the whole end to end, the support. It's pretty amazing and definitely has some very unique use cases in hospitals and healthcare. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Next up, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Oshiden from Volta. And so, yeah, please tell us a bit about Volta and then, your role in the ecosystem, and then we'll get into a little bit more of a meatier conversation from there.
Great, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Dan, and I'm the Growth Funding and Investment Strategy Manager at Volta. A little bit about myself. I'm not going to say too much. Just a few things about myself. I have a background in marketing communications. I spent over 25 years working on the agency side back in Nigeria. I arrived Canada 5 years ago. Before I came here, I also was a founder. I was a co-founder in about 3 startups back in Nigeria and a solo founder in one company that I've left for my co-founder when I followed my kids here, my daughters here to study. I have 3 daughters. The first has graduated now, and the second one is in the medical school in Halifax here. So I joined Volta 2 years ago, and to build the growth, the funding and fundraising role. That role is around basically helping teams and residents at Volta to raise capital, both dilutive and non-dilutive capital. Generally, supporting them to navigate the non-dilutive funding landscape and also guide them through investment readiness. So we have this investment readiness program at Volta that we put our residents through to help them get ready to sit with investors and actually raise capital. Volta is the largest innovation hub east of Montreal. We are located in downtown Halifax, and our role in the ecosystem is to help founders build their business, turn their idea into commercial ventures, and also support them to build those ventures into scalable businesses. And we do this by supporting these founders with a community to network with other founders and investors and ecosystem leaders. We also support them with access to funding. We support them with expert advice, because we have a network and a pool of subject matter experts that help these founders to actually navigate challenges in different areas of the business. Finally, we support them with a network, to a lot of suppliers that could help them navigate and access new markets. Basically, that's what Volta does, and our role in the ecosystem is basically just to help business grow.
Thanks so much, Dan. And I think the one thing that I really love about Volta is that you're pretty like industry agnostic, right? Like you're not very specific. You really are. And I know too that you guys don't do like specific programming, which I think is really nice, really open for a lot of ventures. So you can really get to know a venture and it becomes a lot more specific to where they are as opposed to having, you know what I mean? And which I think is really nice and very customized for a lot of.
Yeah, you're right. That we are sector agnostic, but we also have a specific program for medtech and headtech ventures. We are sector agnostic, but we try to also have, because the headtech, the medtech and headtech ventures, they follow a different route from other ICT ventures. So we try to give them a special kind of journey in our residency. We've also moved away from what a lot of innovation hubs do, which is put people in the same classroom, irrespective of the stages they are in or irrespective of the sector they are in. So we moved away from program-based, cohort-based support to startups to what we call the one-on-one founder-first approach, which is we tailor our support to each team based on the stages they are, the tech sector they are in, the specific challenges that they are facing. And so we give them tailored, customized support, to help them crack the challenges they face.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I think maybe on that note, I'm going to turn it back to Dan Brake, and maybe you can tell us, I know that Polyunity's been around a few years now. Maybe you can talk to us about some of the challenges so far that you've faced. And again, because we're talking to investors today, maybe more so, more about like the fundraising, the capital raising, that whole strategy. How has that journey been for you guys over the last few years?
Yeah, sure. So the interesting time to raise capital. There was a whole bunch of activity, 2020, 2021, and early 2022, and then suddenly it all stopped, and so the number of checks and the amounts changed drastically from a period of really high multiples on valuations to where it is today. So the journey has definitely been challenging. It's been different. There's still money there. We're starting to see money come out again, but there's a lot more due diligence, a lot more questions. People are talking a lot more about runway, not necessarily just growth. Whereas the conversation's just changed quite a bit, I would say, in the last couple of years. Before Polyunity, I was at another startup in the genomic space, and so over the last couple of years, I've seen really big changes in what's happening when you're trying to raise capital, and certainly in the conversations. I think one of the other, that's about capital. Is it okay if I talk a little bit about Can Health for a moment? Okay, sure. Because one of the other challenges in health tech is there's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of hoops to get through. As Dan just mentioned, the path is very different from other organizations. And also in Canada, what tends to happen is a company will sell to the US or Europe, get bought by a US company, and then sell back into Canada. It's this weird path that a lot of health tech companies end up following. But through agencies like Can Health that are across Canada network, looking to help Canadian healthcare organizations adopt innovations, where basically you can sell into one of their edges, and then instead of following traditional procurement paths, you can fast track your technology or your innovation and get it into healthcare faster. Is amazing. It's been a big benefit to us. Also, full disclosure, one of the announcements recently was we were named Can Health Company of the Year. But we really see the benefit of having these collaborative networks across the country to help our Canadian startups, and then also help our healthcare system. Like, these are technologies and innovations that can help everyone in Canada. Let's get them out there as quickly as we can.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, congratulations. I did see that announcement come out as well. So congrats on that. I appreciate that. And I think one of the things I heard from you that I think is very interesting is the discussions moved away from growth and more towards runway, which I think is very interesting. I don't know if you had any other comments on that before I turned it over to Dan to kind of get his perspective on that.
Yeah, I think before, like, scaling up and trying to take advantage of a particular market situation or whatever, and that's still a thing. Like, we're raising money now. Part of that is definitely growth, but it's also a line of sight on like 2025, 2026, like how extending that runway, making it as long as possible. Whereas before it was how quickly can you grow, how quickly you can get your revenue in a certain place, and try to hit those targets. I think the playing field has shifted a little bit.
Right. And so maybe Dan Oshiden, I'm curious, from your perspective, is that something that you've seen as well, working with ventures and also working with investors? Is that something that's been pretty common? And then I'm also curious, as a follow-up, what are some of the things that you think the ecosystem players have to do to support ventures?
Okay, first, the first part of that question, about what investors are looking at right now, like Dan said, is they want to see a longer runway. You don't want to come asking for fund when you are gasping and desperate for cash. So you need to have considerable runway for you to come to an investor. And apart from that, they are all asking that, they don't just want to see the potentials. They want to see how you are, laying out your vision and following it through. Do you have a product in the marketplace? Do you have paying customers? Have you started generating some revenue? Do you have, even if you don't have revenue yet, do you have a pipeline that one can look at? Are you building partnership that could actually help you land your vision? So that's what investors are all looking at right now. That's when people say it's much more difficult to raise right now. It's because it's moving away from what used to happen before 2021 when you have a vision, you have a product vision, they are ready to take a look at it and grow with you. But now they want to see some signs before they take you on and put foot inside the ring.
Right. And I think, and I appreciate you bringing that up because that is 100%, when we talk about, when we go through the due diligence with our investors in our program, it's how do you find those signs, right? And then that's really part of it. How do you do diligence on an early stage venture? And it's how do you look at those things, right? Because sometimes you can't always get the proper, you need to supplement what's there in the numbers, right? With some of these more qualitative aspects. And so that's what we go through when we go through the investment training. And then I'm curious, maybe Dan Oshiden again is just another follow-up to that is how do you think the ecosystem players have to support that dynamic now? Now that we know that that's what investors are looking for, how do ecosystem players play a part in that?
Yeah, what we tell founders of Volta is, they need to have a change in mindset. We used to have this situation where once founders walk through the door to any innovation hub or startup support system, they think it's the first thing they have to do is to raise capital. So there are a lot of things to be done before you get investment ready. Beyond your product, you need to work on your team. You need to work on the market. You need to have a deeper understanding of the market. You need to show the market opportunity. What's the size, and how are you going to assess that market? So a lot of these are the things founders need, and what we do at Volta is to surround teams with expert advice. We have subject matter experts in the areas of pricing, financial modeling, IP that would give value to whatever business or product or idea you're building. Customer acquisition, sales. We have all of these. At any point in time, we have about 60 subject matter experts that are spread across the world. That they are not just experts by name. They've been there, they've seen it all. They've exited, startups, and they've been very successful, or they're even currently building startups. And so we put these resources at the disposal of founders to help them navigate all of these questions that we're talking about. So those are the things founders are looking out for, and that's what that they have challenges with, and that's what Volta does to help the founders find their way through.
Right. And I think that's really important because, especially when we talk about bringing investors and venture founders together, those are the things that founders are looking for. So those are the things that investors also have to be able to offer. How are you supporting? I know that smart capital is a lot more important now to a lot of venture founders. And so, it's not just this transaction that I need your money. It's what are these other things that can help us with, in addition to your capital. And so I think all those things that Dan Oshiden just mentioned are important things for investors to consider when they come to the table. And also it also makes that impact investment, that whole relationship, very different, right? It really does feed into what is my impact investment thesis, right? Based on here's what I can offer and how does that inform my impact investment thesis. And again, those are things that we offer in the program. So I really appreciate those thoughts. The last thing that I would like to get into is, because I know that Volta, one of the things I also like of Volta is that you guys do a lot of international reach. And actually, I think it's very big across the Atlantic region. I've noticed that there's a lot of support for like international channels. And so I was kind of curious, Dan Brake, what's been your experience working with, Canadian or national investors versus international investors?
Yeah, so we've bootstrapped the company to date and have not had to raise any money, which is difficult, but it's good. So we've been talking to investors across North America. We haven't gone any further abroad than that. Our main market and core market is in North America, and so the way we are thinking of it is, we have a series of things that we want from our investments. So smart money, of course. A couple of the smart things that we want is, first of all, contacts within the field that we're working or experience directly working in those fields. And then the other part of it is able to unlock future rounds of investment, because it's actually not that bad to raise money right now in early rounds. It seems to be a lot more difficult. Like I'd be a lot more concerned with our raise right now if we're going for a Series B or a Series C round. But yeah, so there's I've completely misplaced the question because I got so far into the.
Yeah, that's okay. I was just asking the experience that you've had with these different investors in your conversations.
Yeah, so I found that south of the border, in terms of the U.S. investment, they invest differently, and it's not necessarily around risk. I think there's a couple of factors at play. So yeah, like we hear all the time that in the U.S. they invest to make money, in Canada we invest not to lose it. But I think a part of it is the money starting to flow south of the border again a little bit differently. It seems like this is just from folks we're speaking to, different groups we've been in front of. It seems like there's a little bit more tolerance. Money starting to move south of the border more than it was, say 9 months ago, which is a positive thing. And it seems to be starting in Canada as well. The conversations are really, really similar, but the amount of diligence that happens in Canada in front of Canadian investors seems to be higher. And I think that's prepared us for a lot of conversations south of the border. I think the exchange rate is a bit different. So there's people looking north of the border to see whether or not there's a bit of a deal to be had. And I think especially for us, like the Canadian healthcare market is fairly small when you consider it to our neighbors to the south, right? Like it's, there's us there. There's, I don't know, 4 or 5 times the number of hospitals in Canada as the US. They've got a much bigger field, and the way the market there works completely differently. So for us, the conversation is a little bit different, and it's partially to do also with the types of markets north and south of the border as well. And anyone that understands the US market versus the Canadian is obviously, as we're evaluating our investors, as something that's really appealing as well.
And Dan, are you seeing something similar? I know that you've seen a lot of U.S. investment interest in the Atlantic region, so I'm curious if you have any other comments.
Yeah, we've welcomed a few investors from across the border to Atlantic Canada, and what we're doing right now, Volta, is building a network of investors across Canada, because we are looking to have more interest in the Atlantic Canada ecosystem from investors across Canada, especially in the West. We've had a few dealings with investors across the border. I mean, the Canadian Women's Network, Silicon Valley, has been one of those partnerships we've used to assess investors across the border, but that has not really, delivered the results we want yet. So we right now are concentrating on investors across Canada to bring them to Atlantic Canada, and that is really yielding a lot of results for us.
And and I'm really grateful for that comment too, because that is something that we're trying to do to bring with our ecosystem partners as well. Is how are we bringing in investors from all across Canada to support the region? And like I said, I think there's the infrastructures in place in the Atlantic region, which I think is really nice. There is a lot of government support. There is the access to international channels, then there is the access to all these investors. So I think it's a really great opportunity for investors to consider deploying their capital into ventures in the Atlantic region. I think the other thing, maybe the last thing we can touch on, we can discuss the valuations. I know I've heard a lot of comments, and I think this kind of relates to the conversation of investment from the US and investment from Canada. I've heard a lot that valuations in the Atlantic region are fair. And I think that's a great word, because it's not underpriced, but it's not overpriced either. Like when you have, and that to me speaks again a lot to the infrastructure that's in place, that if you're, if you have fair valuations, you have a solid infrastructure in place for ventures, and all of that really helps de-risk an investment for an investor. I guess I'm just curious, maybe Dan Brake, any kind of comments on that?
Yeah, I think the valuations here are really fair. I think there's a couple of reasons for that as well. You mentioned supports a minute ago. So for every dollar that's invested here, most companies can pretty much 4x that through different government agencies and non-dilutive funding. But I think also the amount of diligence that we've gone through over the past little while to prove where valuation lies, there's a lot of work and a lot of time has gone into it. And it's also, whereas like 10 years ago, not many companies here had raised money or have gone through a transition into like a big acquisition event or whatever. We joke around about the Verafin effect here in Newfoundland. I know Dan and I were chatting about this in the past as well. Like Verafin, the largest acquisition in Canadian history, when a local company was bought out by NASDAQ, put a spotlight, and suddenly there was a lot more focus on Atlantic Canada generally. And I think that was a good thing for companies here in the region, but it also means that most companies had to level up and learn a lot more about how you raise capital, what investors are looking for, reading books like Venture Deals. There's a bunch of things that the local ecosystem has done to try to, raise the game a little bit in terms of having intelligent conversations with potential investors.
That's great. Thank you so much. And then maybe Dan Oshiden, same question to you about the valuations, and any other thoughts or perspectives on that statement about fair valuations in the region.
I think we compare favorably with valuation in the US, and basically these are as a result of what investors outside of Canada, think of this region. For instance, we've witnessed population growth in this Atlantic region in the past 3 to 5 years, and this included increase in international student enrollment. You see a lot of students from across the world coming to study here, and most of them, they come with experience, they come with entrepreneurial experience, and a few of them set up companies here. From the data we gathered at Volta, we found out that the new ventures that are coming up in Atlantic Canada, up to 45% of that are funded by immigrant founders or immigrant students who graduated from the post-secondary institutions with entrepreneurial programs. So this results in a pool of talent that is also a benefit to people and investors wanting to invest in Atlantic Canada. In addition to this diverse talent pool, Dan already mentioned the ease with which founders can access non-dilutive funding, and government is also investing in companies or in startups through crown corporations like NBIF and Invest Nova Scotia. Whatever investment these international investors bring to Canada or Atlantic Canada, they are met halfway with investment from government and from non-dilutive sources. So this is the kind of thing that raises valuation for ventures in Atlantic Canada. So I think it's fair to say we are matching up with valuation, in America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And again, I think those are very important things for investors to consider, looking to deploy their capital into ventures in the Atlantic region. I'm just looking here through our chat. If there are any questions from anybody, please be welcome to drop them. Wait, let me see. Maybe I'm in the wrong thing. I'm not. So let me see here. Okay, I don't think we have any questions, but I know that we had a really good discussion. Maybe one new by using the Q&A. Oh no, sorry. It's okay. I asked you a bunch of questions. I took all the good questions. That's what happened. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for being here. Did you have any last final thoughts or anything that you would want anybody interested investing in the region? Any final thoughts or anything you'd like to share or offer to those people?
I think this the best of times for Atlanta, Canada, and I see that I'm just seeing that this region is going to explode in 10 years with the way we are attracting talent, with the way we are attracting uh, investment, and with the way uh, new startups are coming up every year. You know, it's doubling every year. We have at least 100 startups coming up or just starting off uh, annually in Atlantic Canada, and that's a good sign that we're in for something good. I am happy to be here, and I think this is the best time to be in this place.
Thank you so much, Dan. And Dan Brake?
Yeah, sure. I'd echo that. There's a ton of really exciting startups here in the local ecosystem and across Atlantic Canada, obviously, but also across all different industries from fintech, legal tech, health tech. We started Bounce Health Innovation here maybe 6 years ago. There's over 50 companies enrolled in that, and Bounce Health is basically structured to help medtech companies, get their first foundations, get up and running, help them through regulatory process, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's also a very connected and very supportive ecosystem, not just from government financing and everything else, but typically if a company has an issue or a problem or a challenge, like I can reach out to any of my peers and I know that they're there to support. We're all rallying and cheering for one another. So in terms of like of a collaborative space, there's a lot of depth in what we're seeing in Atlantic Canada, where people are out there fighting for one another and cheering one another on. It's also a really different place to work. There's a lot of people moving back here who wanted. COVID created a lot. House price increase being one thing, but also just a lot of people are moving here because it's a different lifestyle. It's not just a nice place to start a business, but in terms of a place to live and a place to grow a business and somewhere where you can do that, but then also spend 10 minutes be out in nature. It's a really different place to work. So yeah, if I think there's reason Verafin happened in Newfoundland, and the reason the spotlight is kind of on Atlantic Canada right now is because there's lots of really interesting things happening, and people have learned a lot from what's taken place in the local ecosystem for the past few years.
Right. Awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. We did get one last comment here from Mikhail.
Yeah.
I hope I'm saying that right. Who works in VC, noticed that Canadian startups are not global minded. The first that they think of is the US, and then how do we support startups to think beyond that?
Yeah, it's a fair comment to make. It's a fair judgment to make of Canadian startup. I have noticed that myself. The reason for that is also because the US is a very large market. So you need to first conquer that before you move further to Asia or EU or the EU so it's natural that Canadian startups will want to first explore US market before they go anywhere. But you are right by saying that they need to look further. They need to be much more global minded. And there are efforts to address that, not just from Volta is too small to address that. The government of Canada is addressing that. We have the Export Development Canada that has a lot of programs that are meant to open markets for Canadian startups and Canadian firms. We also have the Trade Commissioner's Office, which has outposts in every Canadian High Commission or embassy across the world. I have had dealings with them when I worked in a startup, and we're looking to just basically understand the market potential in the EU. And so we had to be connected to the Trade Commissioner's desk in the high commissions in Belgium, Spain, France, Italy, where we were trying to understand the market there and see if we go. So those are some of the things that are happening right now to address this challenge. But on the part of Volta, we tap into these resources, we tap into this network the Export Development Canada and Trade Commissioner's Office when any startup team lets us know they want to assess or make connections within markets outside of the US, where we traditionally have a lot of connections.
Right.
I don't know if I answered your question, but that's it. Thanks.
No, I think that's
Very
great.
good question.
Appreciate that. And yeah, there is a lot of the government support for going international and to encourage a lot of ventures to do that. Dan Brake, did you have like a short comment on that? Because there was another question here that I think might be interesting, but I didn't want to negate your voice.
Yeah, sure. Just I think sometimes it also depends on what sector someone's working in. If you're in healthcare, it's easy, it's fairly efficient. It goes south of the border. We see a lot of energy focused companies here doing work in Norway and West Africa and other places as well. And us, for instance, my wife's from Australia. I'd love to take PolyUnity there, but that's a very personal perspective. But yeah, I do see, depending on what sector people are working in, the way they're trying to grow their business, changes where they're thinking.
Great. Thanks so much. And I think the final question that we'll take here, there's been a few startup failures globally due to founder fraud, et cetera. And then how is Volta and investors trying to prevent that in diligence? Are there certain things that you're looking for? And I'd be curious even to maybe Dan Brake, if you have any feedback on that, but maybe Dan, I'll shoot in first.
I can take this first. Very interesting question. Thanks. What we do at Volta around this is basically, with the investors we work with, we have on due diligence, not just due diligence. The way to handle situations like this, because it's becoming more common, is to have governance in place, to have an eye into what you are investing in. So we have investors that will let us know when they put money in any startup. There are 4 levels of involvement that you could think of. They could just act as mentors. They could act as advisors. They could act as part of the operators, or they could take a board seat. So this is just examples of how you can get involved and have insight or eye into what's happening in your portfolio company. Due diligence will not solve everything, because due diligence is at the beginning. But you need to work with these teams. You need to have an eye into what is happening. Having reviews through being mentors, advisors, and taking a board seat, some ways of tracking this.
Right. Yeah. So being a little bit more involved before making that investment. Dan Brake, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think as part of the diligence process, some of you definitely want to dig into those things, but I'd certainly have a look at how the governance structure of the organization is set up, how their reporting is structured, and make sure there's some depth in the reporting. If the financial statements and the sales pipeline and if a few other things aren't lining up, dig in and start asking questions about why. We also have just at our company, we have a series of policies about background checks and everything as well, if you're thinking about like on an employee level. But I definitely dig into the governance structure, how the organization makes decisions, and dig into dig into all the documentation that you're giving, including client contracts and the sales pipeline and the financials. And typically, the more work you do up front, the better you are protecting yourself against a fraud.
Yeah.
The other thing I may add to that is when we ran a fund in Volta, what we did was, so in addition to asking for just quarterly financial reporting, was to ask for a whole lot more data from these companies. How many staff are you employing right now? What's your MRR? What's the pipeline like? So a whole lot of questions that when you see trend, if you have 10 employees last month and you have less than that this month, you want to ask some questions, what's going on? So regular check-ins and regular reporting that gives much more indices much more information that financial are key to unraveling what's happening inside the startups you've invested in.
Yeah, the truth is in the data.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know at Spring, in our impact investment challenge, we do go through things as well, like how this fits into the diligence. And then I know the other thing that we often do too is, that's why we're very heavy working with ecosystem partners. So for example, specifically to the impact investment challenge, our partners, we mentioned Imaginal Ventures, they actually kind of do a lot of the pre-qualification of the ventures as well. And I think that's another important aspect, kind of sharing that between people. And I think the more people that kind of get involved in that between different ecosystem constituents, right? I think that also kind of helps to safeguard things a bit, because you got more people, more eyes, more perspectives. And that's something that we really value in any ways, especially when we enter a new ecosystem, when we enter a new market. That's one of the reasons that we like to really work in a supportive way with our partners. So thank you very much. Dan, it looks like you've made a new LinkedIn connection after this. So happy connecting, Dan Hodgson, and then Dan Brake, thank you so much for being here. Super happy to have you both. If anybody's listening has any questions about the upcoming Spring Impact Investment Challenge, please be welcome to reach out to me, Vanessa at spring.is. We'll send you the deck that we went through as well. And you can also connect with each of us as well on LinkedIn. Please be welcome to do that. Thank you so much, guys, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all.
Take care, everyone.